Now, this set had a lot of great players, but the MVP wasn't Biscuit, it wasn't Obito, it wasn't Kiver, it wasn't even Ice. In fact, the MVP of this set was the tree on Reef, which not only managed to obscure Biscuit's vision, but blocked several inkjet shots, saving Obito's life in a crucial situation. And as such, this of course did lead to Radiance getting the map victory, so definitely shoutouts to the tree on the Reef for that amazing play. Hello everyone, this is Chara, and today we're going to be talking about the meta and analyzing a few recent top tournament events. And the main thing to happen is in a Japanese Major Area Cup, a Glooga deco by the name of Tiramisu managed to win. A duly getting a result outside of CDS in a major tournament has not happened in literally over a year. And it is pretty interesting to see Glooga of all weapons. It's a really unconventional thing. You barely see it. And this player mostly just plays it because they're a one-trick. So I want to talk about why I think maybe Glooga is a bit of a solid option. How did it get the result that it did? And we'll go over this team comp in just a second. So this Tournament Series Area Cup is a top JP Major event. It happens every few weeks. It is a zones only single elimination or groups to single elimination tournament. And the winning comp here we see had Glooga Deco, which is basically the main point of this that we have not seen very far. They're being paired with H3, pretty much your substitute for N-Zap here, running a main power build as usual, so kind of more mid-range support. We have the slosher player, Retina, one of the best sloshers in Japan. And we have Rusu, who's a big backline flex, who's played for Pixie Monsters, one of the top JP teams until they disbanded. He's played C-Jet, he's played Dynamo, X-Slosher, and very recently has been pushing Flingza quite a lot. So this comp is really, really insane, I think, for a number of reasons. First of all, it's got a solid amount of missile and armor output. Flings is really good at being able to charge up missile fast. It has a good amount of range, good amount of paint, and a lot of things to combo with the Slosher. One hit from the H3, long distance flicks from the Flings that will do enough damage for the Slosher to get that one-shot burst. Rush can combo well with it. And the Glooga may not seem to fit in with this kind of comp here. It may seem just a bit out of nowhere, like why is there a Glooga with this? So Glooga, to me, has a very similar job to Kensa 52. And the reason I think Glooga fits fine is because in this kind of meta, a weapon that can wall out, kind of control space by keeping itself alive and just having the threat of I will kill you if you approach me and you cannot kill me because I have a splash wall, is pretty good right now. And we've seen 52 do that a lot. If you think about it, Glooga can do the exact same thing. Glooga has the same type of wall, the same quick kill time, the same survivability special, and it even has dodge rolls to help keep itself alive. If you think about it, Glooga and 52 can often fit very similar roles in a team. The main difference would be the lack of paint from the Gloogas in exchange for a bit more range of the kill time, which obviously is something that might not always be super worth it, but in this case, it can absolutely work out. So game 1 happens on port and goes against a pretty standard 52 E-Leader Zap comp. In this case, they're running a second 52 just for Ray spam, since Curling is very good at farming on the stage. But what you can see that the Glooga does is play kind of like a longer range 52. They're going to use their wall to control space, slowly force their way in, and just kind of control respect on the area. Even if you can't see them here, they're controlling the right side and just putting pressure. Their job is to just keep people away. And if they leave them alive long enough, it's going to get a baller to be able to continue to keep itself alive. And eventually his team is able to help clean up this area. And Glooga can play really well for just this kind of you cannot fight me type of thing. And the splash wall is just incredibly useful with the amount of E-Leaders Japan has been running lately, which has kind of been dominating the zones meta for backliners. And they still have that quick 2-shot kill time, so they need to threaten to kill something. You see it happens just as fast as a 52 can. So Glooga can definitely fit this kind of role and playstyle. As we get on later into the set, we get stages that are much less favorable for Glooga, like Moray, and we'll see Muscle Forge later on. And Glooga still has to play this kind of similar playstyle, but it's much more trying to take advantage of opportunities where they can get forward, because on maps where it's a lot harder for the wall to be able to control space, you can see that Glooga can struggle a lot more. So for these maps, it's much less worth it to run Glooga over something like a 52, which by nature is going to be able to play more versatile, since it isn't reliant on the dodge rolls to get its kills, and is a bit better in close range combat. So these are situations where Glooga can struggle, and even if Glooga can work here, it is important to note that this is a Glooga, like, basically a one-trick, someone who plays the weapon and almost only that weapon for most of their time. They put a lot of hours into it. So on the question of, like, are we going to see other top-level players or other people in general flexing to this weapon, it's not really something I can see happening. Because this weapon, while it's proven to work, and these results prove this weapon can work, this player is proven, you can win with this weapon, technically. It's still incredibly difficult and incredibly niche where this option is better. I'm not saying it isn't better than 52 in some situations or doesn't have its use. It definitely does. But is it worth the level of investment to have these few map modes are really good for this weapon? I'm not so sure. Like, I don't think we're going to be seeing frontline players flex onto this thing. Maybe some Squelcher players on a few maps could play this weapon, but I don't know if we're going to see it too often. We've been seeing more Ely or Splash Zap, more kind of like short range with the charger. Because typically if you run a lot of short range, you want something for that long range pressure, because mid range kind of has enough on its own, but when you have short range, you don't have anything to kind of pressure over long pathways. So I guess to wrap up, the last thing I want to note as we look at Game 3 is Glooga is pretty independent of a team comp, I think. Glooga definitely requires a good amount of paint and a good amount of support, but I don't think it's really dependent on needing to be paired with specific weapons. I think this weapon can play pretty independently of what's being ran alongside it. It's mostly about controlling space by itself, and its kit is very self-dependent. Like, it doesn't rely on other weapons as much, which I think is a positive for the weapon. Like, if you are a Glooga player, I don't think you need to worry about teaming with as specific players as you would if you played something like a Slusher or a Rapid Blaster. So, the main thing I really think Glooga needs in comms is just painting capability. But I do think, once again, this is where 52 is just a little bit better, because 52 can paint for itself where Glooga can't. I really do see 52 as just this more versatile option that fits the same niche, so it's difficult for Glooga to see as much use just from, if I'm going to pick up a weapon, why would I play this when this weapon is easier and does pretty much everything besides a few stages, just as well as this weapon. But at the end of the day, it is still great to see one-tricks pushing their weapons and getting results with it. It's just more proof that a lot of things can work in comp, and it's great to see another dually in particular winning an event. The result did go 3-0 to the Glooga team, so absolutely cool, props for them. Not only pushing Glooga, but pushing Flings a little bit, which I've talked about quite a bit before. It's just great for painting, great for missile output, so it's amazing to see these players pushing their weapons and proving what can happen if you really put a lot of time into something. So next up, I want to talk about the Ludi finals for X Division between Starburst and Radiance, two of the best teams in each of their respective regions for Europe and North America. Ludi being the main Splatoon league to happen. This finals happened just very recently, and these two teams would go against each other in the best of 9, this time being on all modes. There were some pretty interesting comps here, and I think each team kind of had their own playstyle. Radiance tended to stick much closer to a set comp, mostly having a Bamboo or Custom Jet backline, Zap or Rapid, H3 or CDS, and then Kiver playing mostly a bit of Knot and Splash, just kind of flexing around that frontline capability. With very standard comps we've seen from Radiance time and time again. We know these weapons work, we know they're established. H3 is the only less common one, and Obito is, of course, the best H3, having played the weapon for quite a long time, almost getting 3000 X power, so fairly known. Starburst, on the other hand, is playing with Biscuit, who normally plays for FT1, but FT1, of course, did not participate in this league. And the Starburst comps have changed quite a bit, as they've needed one of their players to flex onto NZAP to have that armor support while Ant was subbed out. And at first, we started to see a lot from Bran and Jared, the two frontline players. But recently, Ice has been showcasing his versatility, and on specific maps has been doing the Zap themselves in order to play backless. And I cannot stress this enough. Switching between a backless composition and a team with a backliner is not an easy thing. Playing around like a Charger and a Custom Jet is very different than playing with your Nautilus as a longest range. So Starburst has become an incredibly versatile team over the course of this Ludi set, and I do think it was a major factor in how well they performed in these grand finals. Most of the time we see Ice go off backliners just for maps where it's better to have that kind of aggression. In particular, this would be on non-zones maps, since those can just be more prone to, you need to run through your opponents to get tower in the right spot. You really need to push up fast in Rainmaker or Clams. You need to be aggressive on those pushes. And I do think in an all modes environment, backlines being able to switch to a kind of supportive role, while incredibly difficult, is a pretty good option to be able to have, and it just gives your team a lot more playstyle differences. It gives you so much adaptability into what your playstyle can be. I think it's an absolutely great option to have, and I think it's very important for backlines nowadays to be able to be somewhat flexible. Like, maybe it's not to a completely different role, but maybe you can play Custom Jet when you need some more aggression, or play Bamboo when you need to stuff frontliners, switch back to E-Leader when you need that distance pressure. Being able to switch between a lot of different options is something that I think is really important, and something that ICE, as usual with backline trends, is jumping on before many others do. So, I haven't talked about Radiance too much yet, but going into Game 3 with 2 losses on the board, we did see Radiance switch up their comps a bit and go back to something we have seen them with a lot in the past, especially when they were Alliance Rogue, which is their double ink armor comps. And double armor is something we've been still kind of seeing, but not really as frequently. Most of the time it's with a Tri, which doesn't really have the same level as armor output as 2 supports. Is a lot of teams have gotten better at dealing with double armor, being able to wait out that first armor, or just in general being a lot more patient at dealing with the special. I do think armor is mostly a great special when you take team fights, and the ability to just kind of stall out that armor, play patiently, wait for the right opportunities, is something that's becoming more and more important. And this leads to double armor just being kind of awkward, because if you can't get value off of the ability to fight with 2 ink armors, it's just not really going to work out super well for you. Other specials can work in a team environment in terms of getting the same kind of value, and particularly we've been seeing a lot of Tenna missiles, especially with more Bamboos coming out. And missiles is much better at completely forcing people to move. It's definitely a smaller window than armor, but it's much better to be chained with an armor since you can use missiles at the same time as your ink armor to push in, whereas armor has to be spaced apart. And we've seen Starburst and a few other teams go to these double missile comps rather than double armor that we do. Of course, we still see some double armor from time to time, and it tends to work out very well. In this game, Starburst manages to hold for almost the entire match with a very minor amount of armor output, with the Tri-Slasher only getting 3 armors within 4 minutes. It's not a high amount. So armor is being substituted out more and more. I think missiles are becoming much more popular, and it's great at forcing weapons to move, finding, sharking opponents. So I think we're definitely going to be seeing more and more missiles as we keep developing this meta. I don't think it's going to replace armor, but I think it's going to be much more common to see armor plus missile rather than seeing double armor, or even double missile plus armor as opposed to double armor plus a missile. This map, we do see Radiance get a win on an overtime, and I want to kind of talk about how that happened. So, obviously a pick on Jared is huge for the staggering, and Obi gets a kill, and this kind of sets up their overtime situation. And at this point, Bran and Ice make the smart play to kind of get out of there. When it's overtime on zones, you have so much time to be able to get specials to push back in. You don't want to force things. That is what ended up happening when Jared went down to Kiver. And Kiver is incredibly smart when holding. When he's playing at his best, he is really good at being in the positions people want to go, having them think they're safe, and then immediately punishing them the second they drop down. And this is about when we see that to its fullest. On the second push around, Kiver manages to incredibly stay alive and get a trade with Bran in a very dangerous situation. And Hypnos manages to stall at the Inkjet. And if I can even go back here, we can see the problem with Inkjet and Splat Zones at times. If you can wait out this special and it doesn't get a pick, boom, that player is now out of the team fight for a good 3-4 seconds while they have to regroup. And Radiance played really smart. They got the trade, but outside of that firefight, they're playing to stay alive, wait out Starburst specials. And that is what double armor is really good at. So the holding phase is when they took full advantage of it to get this game win and bring the set to a 1-2 score. So very well played by Radiance here. So on Rainmaker, I want you to pay special attention to Ice, the custom jet on the blue side. And I want to talk a bit about custom jet's versatility in Rainmaker, or just in general, because look at this aggressive play as a backliner, shutting down the Stingray and getting out alive. Custom jet has always been one of the most versatile backlines for being able to be aggressive when needed. And I think while custom jet is often played for the race spam, what sets a good custom jet apart is the ability to be aggressive and support their team. You have burst bombs, you have paint, you have a good amount of mobility. And as the meta's developed, we've seen the better C-Jets are the ones who are able to be much more versatile and help their team, and it really shows, especially in modes like Rainmaker, when your backline can suddenly jump in there, help out your team when needed. So just another point to point out to Ice, just continuing to develop the backline meta and show how optimized these weapons can be played. However, the most crazy thing comp-wise that's happened in recent events would be this game on Mako Mart, in which we saw double Kensa 52 coming out from Radiance. And, okay, Kensa 52 is a very common weapon. It is inevitable we were going to see double K52 at some point, but Is this a good option, or was this a mistake? Personally, while I think K52 is very good at walling opponents out, very good at controlling space, solid kill time, etc., the main thing it lacks is that lethal bomb for kind of holding space. And in this case, I think double K52 kind of leans too much in that walling out area. One K52 is pretty good at controlling space by itself. There's very little situations where you need two K52s doing the same job, and especially on a map like this. So, while I think the Booyah Bombs could be pretty useful for pushing back in, missiles will probably do the same kind of thing. I would have much rather seen a K-shot from Kiver here to kind of force movement that way. The K52 is Booyah for its own survivability. It's much more independent, so I don't think running two of them works out super well here. And as you can see, when they do have a lot of map control, when they do have a ton of space, you can see that the 52s really struggle to do too much besides Booyah farm. And again, being the same weapon, kind of take over each other's turfing space here and aren't able to get it as much. And when they do have the double Booyah bomb, missiles are going to force you to throw that because missiles can break and can kill you in that Booyah bomb. So it's really just difficult to compete with the kind of missile output that could be played instead. One Booyah really does enough, and you can see that the Booyahs really struggle to make any kind of plays happen. It's more the individual plays that try to secure things. But it's not really quite enough. But, as Kyo said, sadly, 2 walls do not equate to 1 tree. I hope you guys enjoyed this meta-analysis. I know Biscuit is going to go chop down that tree on Reef now, and let me know if you want to see more stuff like this, and I will see you all in a future video.